you have Mekhala, who's actually a professor at the Ashoka University on sociology and anthropology, and she's also a director at the Center for Policy Research on State Capacity Initiatives. And she's done a lot of research and writing on this whole agrarian economy, which is there in our country, and has a great interest in regulatory institutions.
So first, thank you very much for the opportunity to be in this conversation this afternoon. I think Kavita's said it exactly right, that we start with principles. And I think the second part of that is that you have to take those principles and then start with context. And whenever you look at context, we are now looking at a history of regulatory reform that has been quite diverse. Even within states, existing acts have been very differentially implemented, as we have seen that happen across states in India. So one of the most striking things about this space is how little we actually understand of how it works, and how little we engage with the complex realities of our markets and how they're structured. So, I mean, many people, this is the problem with the academic discourse. Many people said, oh, you must be so excited that mandis are in the news and your research of so many. I was like, I have been carrying around this great sort of frustration for the last, because this is not how it's supposed to happen, the discussion. When you have a vital, visible, vital area of your economy and your society, my only disappointment is that the way this has been done, and of course, and Sharma will contest to this and so many others, that agricultural market reform is incredibly difficult. There is no doubt, and it is incredibly frustrating, and it is driven with interests. But I think it was long overdue that it got the kind of attention to detail that is required. So I think the first instance, I was really hopeful that this conversation could help us go back to some of both the principles and contexts within which we would want to think about what is possible. Having said that, you also have to adjust and deal with what has been dealt to you. And so I invite, I really appreciate the opportunity to think about how does one move forward and think about the current context in a way that could be constructive and really be of help at various levels. So I think that's, again, an extremely important thing. I would like to make, just because it's an opening remark, and maybe we will come back to it right at the end, because this conversation will be focused on the bills. That when you focus on the context, and particularly when you think about strengthening the power of farmers or the terms of engagement of farmers in markets, I do want to make this point quite often, but we often talk about it as access to markets. And the point is, every time any farmer sells their produce in a commercial exchange, the market has access to them. The question is the terms of engagement in our markets. And when it comes to terms of engagement of farmers in markets, regulation has an important but limited role to play. There's much that needs to be done outside of the market space itself that strengthens the hands of buyers. The reason that buyers are relatively stronger is not because regulation made them or didn't make them stronger. It's because of their participation in the economic market that makes them stronger. And so we do need to understand this, right? That this is something that has a much broader scope. So I know that we will not have a chance to discuss all of that today, but I do want to lay it right out that regulatory reform is very much a necessary but insufficient condition, and that regulation itself is tremendously complex and contested. And I only wish we had been able to do this process, which was much required and much delayed, in a way that would have been constructive and consensus building from the start. But I do think we can think through together some of what that architecture could still look like.